Hi there. My name's Lorraine, and 3 years ago, my parents kicked me out of the house based on a lie my ex told them. No chance to explain, no warning, just one night, one accusation, and I was gone, cut out of their lives like I never existed. They even erased me from the family photo. Have you ever felt like someone rewrote your story without asking? Let me know in the comments. I was 25 when they erased me. The night it happened, Red Bridge felt heavier than usual. The kind of summer evening where the air pressed down like a soaked wool blanket. I came home from my shift at the grocery store, the scent of floor cleaner still clinging to my sleeves, only to find both my parents sitting upright at the kitchen table, like they were waiting for a verdict. My mother, Edna, didn't look up right away. My father, Walter, had his arms crossed. His jaw twitched when I walked in. I remember thinking he looked like he was preparing to bury something. And then Jonas showed up. He didn't knock. He just barged in like he belonged there, like the 6 years we'd spent together gave him the right. His eyes didn't carry love that night, only disgust. He held up his phone, hand shaking with either fury or the thrill of being right. "You cheated on me," he said. "With Micah. You sent him photos, texts. Want me to show them to your parents, Lorraine?" I blinked. I hadn't spoken to Micah in years. Not since that party where he cornered me in the hallway and said I owed him something for making me relevant again. "I didn't cheat," I said, my voice barely holding steady. Jonas turned the screen toward my father. Walter didn't even flinch as he scrolled through whatever Micah had fabricated. My mother stayed silent, but her hand crept toward her necklace like she needed the crucifix to shield her from my presence. I pleaded, "Those are fake. You know that. You know me." My father stood up, slow and deliberate. "Pack a bag," he said. "You won't be staying here tonight." I looked at my mother. Her eyes were wet but firm. "This family has enough shame," she whispered. I didn't argue. There was no space left for my voice in that room. I walked out with a small duffel and the engagement ring Jonas had given me still zipped in the side pocket. The rain started as I stepped onto the porch, and by the time I reached the edge of the driveway, my sneakers were soaked, and so was any illusion that love ever came without conditions. 3 years passed. 3 long years where I tried to stitch my life back together in a town that only knew half the story and chose to believe the worse half. I moved out of state, changed numbers, took a job fixing cargo lifts in a shipyard in Louisiana, where people didn't ask about your past if you worked hard and kept your head down. I didn't look back. Until I did. Red Bridge hadn't changed. The road still cracked in the same places. The diner still had the same 2-for-1 coffee special, and the smell of old bacon and fryer oil still lingered like a ghost. I stepped inside to grab a cup to go. That's when I saw it. The community corner had a row of photos, birthdays, bake sales, Thanksgiving dinners. There was one from my family. My family. Everyone was there. My cousins, my aunts, even my father, holding up a half-burned pie with pride. But I wasn't in it. I stared at the photo, remembering exactly when it was taken. I was standing between my mother and father. I remember the dress I wore, navy blue with tiny sunflowers. But in this version, I was gone. Not just cropped. The space had been filled in, blurred over, like I had never been part of it at all. Like they had paused the world, lifted me out, and pressed play again. I didn't buy coffee. I walked straight back to my truck. The image burned into my mind like an overexposed photograph. Later that night, in a roadside motel with peeling wallpaper and a flickering light in the bathroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the gallery on my phone. There it was, my copy of the same photo, the original, with me in it, my hand holding my mother's, my smile unsure but real. I zoomed in on my own face. Not to admire or criticize, just to confirm I had been there. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Edna. "If you're in town, come by. Your father's not well." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I hit delete. The motel room smelled like dust and detergent. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling, not really looking. I was too drained for outrage, too practiced in numbness. But then, something caught. It was a Facebook post. From Edna. A familiar photo, the one I'd seen at the diner. That same Thanksgiving image, cropped and sterilized, But this time, it was online for the entire town to see. The caption read, "Grateful for a family that sticks together. Thanksgiving blessings." My thumb froze mid-scroll. My name wasn't tagged. Of course it wasn't. The comments came in waves. Relatives, church neighbors, even a woman who used to braid my hair when I was little. "What a beautiful family. You're so lucky to have each other. Love seeing everyone together again." I didn't cry. I took a screenshot, saved it under a new album labeled Proof. My fingers trembled slightly, but it wasn't sadness. Not exactly. Just a subtle shift, like something inside my chest had been tightened one more notch. A line formed between my eyebrows and stayed. That night I didn't sleep much. Around 3 a.m., I pulled an old cardboard box from under my duffel bag. I had carried it across 4 state lines. The return address had faded, but I knew the handwriting. The box was from my mother, sent in 2015 when I was living in New Orleans, trying to believe that the silence meant time was working. Inside was the mailbox. My childhood mailbox. A little blue tin box with peeling stickers and a rusted hinge. I used to write letters and leave them there, believing my parents would find them first thing in the morning. She had sent it back without a note. I opened the lid. It was empty. Almost. A few envelopes, all mine, still sealed but clearly never read. One had faint red pen marks scratched across the back flap. I unfolded it. My own handwriting stared back, tentative and small. "I'm sorry for whatever I did." The rest had been crossed out. I sat there for a long time, box on my lap, letters limp in my hand. I didn't remember writing that exact line, but it felt like something I would have said, back when I still believed there was something I could say. The next day, I buried the mailbox beneath a pile of old tools in the back shed of the shipyard I worked at. I didn't want to throw it away, but I couldn't look at it again. Now, in the same motel, I was back to silence. The TV was on mute. The only sound was the tapping of rain against the window. I reached into my bag and pulled out the unopened envelope my mother had handed me when I stopped by the house briefly after my grandfather's passing. I hadn't looked at it since. I turned it over. It was thin, probably just a card. Maybe one of those generic Hallmark types with some pastel birds and the word sorry embossed in gold. But maybe not. I sat on the bed with it resting on my palm, staring. My thumb slipped under the flap. I started to open it. The box had been sitting in the corner of my storage unit for so long, it had started to disappear into the background, like wallpaper or grief. It was dusk, Louisiana summer heat still lingering inside the concrete walls. I was elbow deep in sorting what stayed and what went when I found it again. That same metal box from my mother. The one she returned without a note. The one filled with nothing but silence. This time, I opened it with less hesitation. I already knew what wasn't inside. But one envelope was heavier than the others. It was sealed with a strip of old tape. Thicker, yellowed like it had been handled too many times. My name was written on the front in my mother's hand. But something about it felt off. The pressure of the strokes. Too forceful. Not natural. I peeled it open. A second sheet had been folded inside the first, taped carefully. Red ink bled through thin paper. She admitted it. Caught red-handed. My breath stalled. I knew that handwriting. I had seen it scrawled across birthday cards and love notes and apology letters taped to my windshield after late-night arguments. Jonas. I grabbed one of the only things I'd kept from him, a torn page from a book he once underlined for me, signed with his initials. I held both pages up to the light. Identical. I didn't need a forensic expert to tell me what I already knew. They hadn't just believed the lie. They had archived it. Preserved it like a truth worth referencing. Like a receipt they might one day need to pull out again, just in case I forgot my place. I sat down on the cold floor, the envelope still in my lap, my knees pulled close. They didn't just silence me, they rewrote me. That night, back in the motel, I heard a knock. A delivery van was idling outside, engine purring like it knew something I didn't. The man handed me a box, no return address, no explanation. Inside, white lilies, a black ribbon curled neatly around the stems, and a card. Peace, even when you walk away. JD. I didn't react. not out loud. I just sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at the way the flowers tilted in the box like they didn't know whether to rise or wilt. The same bouquet had been left on my doorstep 3 years ago, on my birthday. No name then either, just silence wrapped in beauty. This time, he signed it. I flipped the card over. A photograph fell out. It was a picture of us, me and Jonas, at the Red Bridge County Fair. We were holding funnel cake and laughing. I hadn't seen this photo in years, but it was folded, my face bent backward, creased sharply, only his half showed. I held it in the lamplight, not shaking, not crying. I just stared at the blank part where I used to be. I found the letter in a place I thought I'd stopped checking, tucked inside the velvet lining of my old jewelry box, folded into the corner like it didn't want to be discovered. The light through the blinds was soft but cold, the kind that made everything feel like a memory. The handwriting was Jonas's. There was no return address, no envelope even, just the letter. I unfolded it with the kind of caution usually reserved for cutting around wounds. It started kindly. He wrote about how hard things had been since I left, how he missed the sound of my voice, the way I laughed at things no one else found funny. He said he thought maybe I was the only person who ever really saw him. Then came the pivot. I still believe in us, he wrote, but I need honesty. I need you to admit what you did. If you can do that, if you're brave enough to come clean, we can start again. I read it once, then again, and then again, slower. Each time the same 2 words echoed in my head, come clean, as if I was the one who needed washing, as if truth was something I had been hiding in the pockets of that soaked duffel bag I carried out of my parents' house 3 years ago. I almost believed him. Back then, I almost replied. I had stood in a payphone booth near the bus stop, gripping a prepaid calling card, thinking maybe if I just apologized, even if it wasn't true, I could stop being so alone. Now I knew better. They hadn't just left me in silence. They had authored a version of me that suited their needs. Jonas hadn't asked for forgiveness. He had asked for a performance. A script where I played the villain just long enough for him to look noble. I folded the letter again, tighter this time, until the creases split at the corners. I didn't throw it away. I slid it back into the jewelry box. It belonged with everything else that used to shine. Later that afternoon, I logged into my old email account. Something I hadn't touched since I stopped checking for their replies. There was one unread message. Subject line, update. It was from my father. Your grandfather passed away this morning. Everything is handled. No need to come home. That was it. No hope you're doing well. No, I thought you should know. No name, no goodbye, just death, delivered like a business memo. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The cursor blinked below the message like it was waiting for a response I didn't have. I remembered the way my grandfather's hands looked. Always clean, even after working in the garden. I remembered how he used to slice apples with the same pocket knife every Sunday. He never raised his voice, never asked me to prove I was worth loving. You were the only one who remembered I existed, I whispered into the silence. That evening I drove out to the edge of Red Bridge, where the roads start to crack and the streetlights turn to stars. I pulled up to the old farmhouse. In the trunk of my car was a sealed cedar box. He had given it to me the week before I left, told me to open it when I was ready. I hadn't been ready for 3 years. I lifted the box onto my lap, sat on the bumper of my truck, and listened to the cicadas humming the same rhythm I'd fallen asleep to as a child. I touched the latch. It clicked. The attorney's office smelled like yellowed paper and bitter coffee. I sat across from a man whose name I barely remembered, but whose office I'd once visited as a child when my grandfather updated his will. I used to think his desk was enormous, like a fortress of grown-up decisions. Now it just looked tired. I'm trying to understand if anything was left for me, I said. He adjusted his glasses, tapped a few keys, and frowned. Well, he said slowly, your grandfather did leave a personal item in your name, a cedar chest, hand-carved, but after his passing, Edna came in and formally declined it on your behalf. My ears buzzed. She what? She claimed you wouldn't want it, that it might be painful. I leaned forward. Did you verify that with me? He shook his head, embarrassed but unmoved. It was within her rights as next of kin. My name had been scratched out of something permanent. Again. The lawyer slid a printed copy of the amended document across the desk. My name was there once, now struck through in neat red ink. Above it, refused. Item reassigned to storage. It felt surgical, intentional, like they hadn't just forgotten me. They had processed me out. I'd like the address where it's stored, I said. He nodded and wrote it down. As I stood to leave, I saw the framed photo of him and my grandfather shaking hands. My grandfather had looked proud. Outside, the sun felt sharp against my skin. Back at the house, the silence greeted me like it was part of the wallpaper. I moved through the hallway slowly. My father's door was cracked open. I was about to knock when I heard the whisper behind me. Don't let your father see you still looking unclean. I turned. My mother stood at the top of the stairs, one hand on the railing like she'd rehearsed the moment. I looked down at myself. Black cotton shirt, worn jeans, clean hair pulled back, no makeup, no filth, no mess, just me. But to her, my bare face was a wound, a reminder she couldn't cover. I said nothing. I walked to the bathroom and turned on the faucet. The water ran too hot, stinging my palms as I scrubbed them over and over. It wasn't about hygiene. It was about being seen the way they wanted, polished, muted, obedient. Later, I stared into the mirror. Unclean, I whispered. The word clung to my reflection like steam on glass. That night, in the motel, I pulled the slip of paper from my pocket with the address of the storage unit. My hands didn't shake this time. I opened my phone and found the locksmith I had used once for a roadside call. I need something opened, I said. What kind of lock? He asked. Something that should have never been locked away from me. He paused. Tomorrow morning? Yes. I didn't sleep. I sat with the lights off, chest heavy with something that wasn't quite grief anymore. It was weight, and I was done carrying it. The hallway closet still smelled like pine cleaner and mothballs. It had always been Edna's domain, her small kingdom of plastic bins, winter coats, and neatly labeled shelves. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just reaching for a jacket that didn't reek of memory. Then I saw it. Folded too tightly, almost deliberately, was a scarf I hadn't worn since college. Deep green, wool, with a frayed corner I used to pick at when nervous. I lifted it and my stomach turned. Black polish, thick, uneven. A dull sheen across one edge, shoe polish. I walked into the living room. My father sat in his usual chair, leaning forward, adjusting his boots with quiet focus. Did you use this? I asked. He didn't look up. It was just lying around. That was it. Not even a shrug this time. Just that one sentence, designed to make me feel ridiculous for asking. I didn't respond. I folded the scarf slowly, then slid it into my purse like it was fragile. He went back to tying his laces. Back in my room, I pressed the scarf to my lap. The polish had stiffened the fabric where the warmth used to live. He hadn't used it by accident. He used it because it no longer belonged to me in his eyes. Because to him, I was something that could be repurposed without permission. I didn't cry. Not this time. Later that day, I stopped by the pharmacy to refill a bottle of ibuprofen. My mother had asked for toothpaste earlier, so I grabbed that too, more out of habit than kindness. I was paying at the counter when I heard her voice behind me, sharp and saccharine. Yes, Micah. The last transfer helped more than you know. No, don't worry. She has no idea. I froze. I stepped back behind the seasonal aisle, my heartbeat suddenly louder than the soft jazz playing overhead. Micah. Of course it was him. I waited until she walked out, then left without the toothpaste. Drove straight back to the motel and pulled out my old laptop. The bank login still worked. It took 3 password resets and a few curse words. But I got in. There it was. An old joint account I'd opened back when Micah and I were still in the same college friend group, meant to split road trip gas and late-night takeout. I never officially closed it. 3 deposits in the last year, all from Micah. All followed by outgoing payments to utility companies in Red Bridge. 2 of them were in my mother's name. My hand gripped the mouse so tight my knuckles whitened. She hadn't just forgiven the man who ruined me. She had partnered with him. They were still in contact, still collaborating, still using the pieces of me they stole. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I reopened that joint account and locked it. Changed the security questions. Set up notifications for every login attempt. It wasn't much, but it was mine to take back. I opened a blank email draft to Micah. I started typing. I wrote 3 paragraphs, then deleted them all. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet. I labeled it Evidence. The first line I typed was Entry 1, July 2014, The Lie. The bank smelled like printer toner and fake citrus. I sat across from a woman with neat hair and a name tag that read Cheryl. She smiled like someone who dealt with difficult news often and had perfected the art of delivering it with grace. "There was an alert connected to your file?" she asked, tapping her keyboard. "Yes," I said. "It came through as suspicious activity. I just want to understand what's attached to my name." She squinted at the screen, then her expression shifted, just slightly. "There was a loan, from 2018, small business classification, co-signed electronically using an ID scan on file." I blinked. "A loan?" She turned the monitor gently toward me. There it was, a $6,200 loan issued through a small business program. The signature on the co-signer line? Micah Lowell. My heart didn't race. It stopped. Cheryl scrolled. "The e-signature attached to your end matches a scan uploaded years ago. It looks like it was a student ID." I didn't say anything, just nodded like this was normal. She looked at me carefully. "Would you like a printed copy?" "Yes," I whispered. She handed me a stapled packet. The paper felt warm, like it had been waiting to tell me something. Micah had helped my mother take out a loan, using my name, years after she disowned me, years after they'd all insisted I didn't exist. I left the bank with that file in my bag, heavier than anything I'd carried home in years. Back at the motel, I sat cross-legged on the bed, phone to my ear. On hold with the credit company. An upbeat instrumental played in the background. I closed my eyes and pictured my mother handing Micah my name like it was a set of spare keys. "Thank you for your patience," the rep finally said. "How can I help you today?" "I'd like to check my credit activity," I said. She asked a few verification questions. Then she paused. "There's an open account under your name, opened in 2017. Still active." I asked what it had been used for. Regular expenses, gas, groceries, pharmacy visits, a few online orders, all based out of Missouri. "Who's the primary cardholder?" I asked. "A beat. Walter Shipman." "My father." I didn't speak, just looked out the window where rain was beginning to smudge the horizon. I had been invisible to them, but my name hadn't been. They used me to buy toothpaste and fuel, and pretend I was still part of their household when it benefited them. A ghost that could still pay bills. I ended the call and placed the phone face down. It didn't vibrate again. That night, I opened my laptop. The same spreadsheet I'd started 2 days before, titled Evidence, was still there. I clicked into a new tab, created a file titled Fraud Report. Then I opened a new email draft. To Redbridge Credit Office at subject, formal notification of unauthorized use of identity. I started typing with a steadiness that surprised me. "I no longer ask for apologies," I wrote. "I ask for accountability." I hovered over the send button and waited. The voicemail came in just after sunrise. I hadn't even finished the instant motel coffee, but something about the robotic tone froze my breath halfway in. "This is a notice from Western Debt Solutions regarding a balance of $4,200 tied to your name." I didn't listen to the rest. I replayed it, pen in hand, writing down the account number like it was something sacred. When I called back, I expected a mistake. Someone else's mess. Someone else's identity tangled in a system error. But it wasn't. "It was signed electronically," the agent said. "Opened through Redbridge Pharmacy's credit program. Defaulted 18 months ago." "I haven't lived in Missouri for nearly a decade," I said, not sure who I was trying to convince. "Regardless, ma'am, the legal liability appears to rest with the co-signer. That's you." I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, letting the silence close in like wet cement. Later that day, a message lit up my phone. My mother's name. "Jonas is hurt. He's in the hospital. Come now." I don't know why I went. Maybe I still wanted to believe there was a line they wouldn't cross. The hospital lights were soft and sterile. When I pushed open the door to room 304, Jonas was already sitting up in bed, propped on pillows, perfectly healthy. He smiled like this was a reunion we'd both agreed on. "There you are," he said, like I was late for something I never signed up for. "You're not hurt," I said. He shrugged. "I needed to see you." Before I could turn around, my mother appeared behind me, closing the door with deliberate softness. "Please," she said. "Just talk to him. You were happy once." I looked at them, their faces like a painting I'd once loved but couldn't recognize anymore. I backed away. "You lied to get me here." Jonas's face faltered. My mother didn't flinch. "I wanted you to remember what it felt like," she said. I left without slamming the door, but I wanted to. That night, still shaken, I sat in a corner booth at the only coffee shop in Redbridge with halfway decent Wi-Fi. The bitterness of the espresso barely registered. Then an email popped into my inbox. No subject line. No sender name. Just one line. "Thought you should see this. A friend." I clicked. Attached was a scanned invoice from Heartline Family Therapy. Session date, 6 months ago. Attendees, Jonas Doyle and Edna Shipman. Group topic, intervention approaches for defiant family members. My vision blurred. They hadn't just coordinated to bring me back. They had strategized how to manage me, how to correct me, like I was a broken appliance, not a person who had once given them everything. I didn't finish my drink. I didn't speak to anyone. I just walked out into the fading sun, keys clenched in my hand, the heat of the day still clinging to the sidewalk. By the time I reached the storage unit, dusk had spread across the fields. I unlocked the door and stepped into the quiet. The cedar chest was where I'd left it, centered, waiting. Beside it, the envelope. I sat down cross-legged on the concrete, jacket wrapped around my knees, held the envelope in both hands, and said, barely above a whisper, "This time, I'll choose who I am." The house was already awake when I arrived. The curtains in the living room had been drawn, the kitchen light was on, and I could hear my mother's careful footsteps upstairs. I didn't knock. I walked in like I used to, except this time I moved like a guest. Quiet, deliberate, unseen. I didn't speak. I just gathered what little I had left scattered through the years. A sweater I'd forgotten in the laundry room. A book I used to read with my grandfather, tucked behind a stack of outdated cookbooks. A framed photo, me at 7 years old, wedged behind a faded portrait of my parents smiling stiffly at a wedding that wasn't theirs. I took the photo. No one stopped me. From the staircase, my mother watched. She didn't ask why I came. She didn't offer a word. We stared at each other for a long moment. I waited for regret. Or maybe defiance. But all I got was stillness, like she was trying to decide if I was real or just another thing that needed dusting. Back at the motel, I sat at the same desk where I'd once opened that spreadsheet called Evidence. But this time, there were no documents in front of me. Just a blank page. I began to write, not to them, but to myself. It started simple. You survived. And then more came. Everything I had never been able to say aloud. You were never the problem. You were never broken. You are not made smaller by those who refuse to see you. I folded the letter slowly, pressing down each crease. Then I placed it inside the cedar chest. That afternoon, I drove into town one last time, not for revenge, for order. The notary office was small and smelled faintly of toner and mint gum. The woman behind the desk processed my request without fanfare. I handed her copies of the documents, the forged loans, the fraudulent account details. "Do you want to press charges?" she asked. I paused. "Not now," I said. "Maybe never. But I'm not staying quiet anymore." She nodded like she'd heard it before. I left the office with clean hands and a file folder that weighed less than it used to. At sunset, I loaded the last of my bags into the truck. The cedar chest sat beside me on the passenger seat, locked again, but this time holding something worth keeping. As I pulled out of Redbridge, I glanced in the rearview mirror one final time. The church steeple blurred behind me, the diner, the street where I once walked barefoot with a suitcase I didn't pack myself. And then it was gone. They tried to erase me. Instead, I erased the part of me that needed their permission. Sometimes, healing doesn't look like a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it's quiet. It's walking away without the closure you thought you needed. It's realizing that peace doesn't come from their apology. It comes from your decision to stop asking for one. If you've ever felt erased by your own family, know this. Your story doesn't end with their silence. It begins with your voice. I don't have all the answers. But I've learned that boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. That reclaiming your name, your dignity, your truth is a form of love you owe yourself. And no matter how long it takes, you're allowed to take your story back. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been made to feel small by the people closest to you? How did you reclaim your space? Or are you still trying? Share your story in the comments. I read them all, and so do others who need to know they're not alone. If this video touched your heart, drop a 1 inch in the comments or let me know where you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, I want to hear that too. Tell me why. Tell me what you would have done in her shoes. And hey, if you believe in stories that make you feel something, stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark, hit that subscribe button. There's more to come. You matter. Your voice matters. And this isn't the end.